Is this thing on? What is happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic freaking Saturday night. So, took the car to the track this past weekend and got some pretty interesting results out of this thing. So, to give you guys an idea, mods to the car are as follows. You got a 309 gear out back, a transmission tune by yours truly. Little bit of fuel added to it, but no timing, still running the stock timing tables. And that's pretty much it. We got a Mopar rear seat delete. Aside from that, everything is cool. What's up, Speed Freak? What's going on, man? So how did it run? Of course, it's on the drag pack. Well, we ran another 1020, ran a 1029, and it ran a 1030, basically right back to back. Let me check in with everybody, let everybody know I'm saying what's up. Speed Freak just said what's up. Slash what's up. Dr. Diff say what's up. Let's see. Michael Johnson saying howdy. Mark Corleone saying you Professor Mason got the arm flex. I like it. Speed Freak saying finally got my red line red Hellcat. Got the Tri-5s, the 305s on. Very nice. I like it. Got the scat pack with the arms. I love it. So anyway, give you guys a breakdown of the runs, DA, conditions, and all of that stuff. First of all, big shout out to Houston Raceway Park. Did a fantastic job with track prep, even though they had over 180 cars there that night. So yeah, talk about staying on top of your game. The guys did a great job. Lane management was far and away improved over what it's been lately. And we had a fantastic time. Didn't get a ton of runs in, but got plenty of runs in with, like I say, track prep that was second to none. Couldn't have asked for any better. Now, here's the funny thing. When the car ran the 1028, the temperature was colder, but we were going up against a pretty nasty headwind. So all night, basically, my indicated timer inside the car was basically roughly 2 miles an hour, but showing on the time slip basically 1.5 miles an hour faster last night than it was when the temperature was lower, but with the headwind. All that being said, though, basically the car backed up the number. When the car went 1028, it basically ran it on a 0 DA with very crisp conditions. The car ran a 1029 at basically minus 400 DA, but with humidity being a little bit higher. I think the last time it was monitored or checked, it was like 77% humidity versus 40%. So as you guys know, high compression or boosted cars, you start getting into humidity or grains or anything like that, any combination thereof, and you're looking at pretty much a train wreck rolling in terms of making power. So anyway, all that being said, the car backed up the number. Consistency was on point. Reaction times all looked good too. So overall, very happy with the car. I have had nothing but success with this thing leading up to this point, though, and that's a really good thing. I know a lot of guys have gotten frustrated with their cars. This thing just never ceases to impress me. So I got a good one, got lucky on that. Other notable mentions, though, buddy Chris got his 1040s with his full weight car, which is in some cases or some respects or some ways of looking at it, a little bit more impressive, running a full bravado setup with no weight reduction whatsoever. Ran a 1040, I think it was a 1049 or 1047, one of the two. And it got me to thinking a little bit. And, you know, my car does have some weight reduction, but not a lot. Mopar rear seat delete being the biggest portion of it. I don't run with the speaker box in the car. But aside from that, it's basically just a drag pack, a gear, and a transmission tune. I'm still running the stock catalytic converter, still running full factory exhaust, the whole bit. So, I mean, yeah, I guess you can say there's some weight reduction taking place there, but it's not like I've really gone crazy with a lightweight seat or, you know, anything else that's nutty. I mean, the passenger seat's still in there and door cards are obviously in there. But I guess my question to you guys is, how far are you willing to take weight reduction to hit a number? Or do you see weight reduction as a bit of a cheat? So let me just kind of walk you through this. Recently there was, I think it was actually last night, Maltese Mustang girl, whatever it is, she's got a 1320, and I think through a pretty significant weight loss program, to say the least, That car ran a 1070 at like 120 odd something miles per hour, which is very impressive. I mean, getting dinged on this quite a bit today. Keeping in mind that I really don't keep up with this type of stuff. So just kind of walk with me here a little bit. I don't know how much weight reduction has been done to the car, but my understanding is that it's got the lightweight bumper supports, a lightweight seat, no back seat, no passenger seat, maybe even further than that in terms of weight reduction. I don't know. It hasn't really been divulged or hasn't been told to me anyway, just weight reduction. So if the car has been gutted completely down to the bare minimum that you can call it still a car and it runs the number, that's great. But is it really still a car at that point? Or is it a toy? Is it a dragster? Is it, a trailer queen or what have you? Even though the car is completely 100% legal, although that car does have long tubes with cutouts, I don't think it's running cats. But again, it just, at what point does it stop being a street car and become a race car? That's really the question that I have, and it's something that I've been struggling with a little bit. Reason for that is 1320 and Demon come from the factory with no passenger seat, or at least it's an option for no passenger seat. And quite honestly, isn't that really the game that most people are playing? I mean, they're pulling as much weight out of the car as possible, which includes the passenger seat. I get the rear seat delete thing. Obviously, I've done it myself, but oddly enough, that too is a factory option, both with the Red Eye and with the Demon. But you can take that a step farther. You can say, well, yeah, Mason, but you got not only a rear seat delete, but you've got a rear gear in the car. Yeah, I do, but it's also a factory part, and it's also a factory option on the Red Eye, and what comes standard on the Demon. So far, I'm kind of still playing the factory game, with the big exception that I never have removed the passenger seat in my car to cover a number or for any reason whatsoever aside from that. So, but aside from that, because again, that is the game that we're playing, and now that we've got the factory hot rods coming with no back seat and no passenger seat, how much farther do you take it? And is it really still a car at that point? I'd love to get y'all's input on that, but let me find out who all's in here. Destroyer 1320's checking in. Say, how you guys doing? Hopefully everybody's doing well. Destroyer saying, Killer Run Man, thank you very much. We'll be talking y'all through those here in a minute. Johnny Peters got the arm flex. I like it. Jean-Paul saying, congratulations on the 10-2. Thank you very much. Christian saying, hey, B, I've noticed a lack of content on YouTube's about cammed Hellcats. Do you have any experience with them? Yeah, I do have some experience with cammed Hellcats. And at stock boost, it's not worth putting a cam in the car. Where cams work with positive displacement superchargers, really, positive displacement supercharging is different than centrifugal superchargers, which are different than turbochargers in terms of how you make or how you put together a camshaft. Timing events are one thing. Turbos are a little tricky because you've got pressure on both sides of your combustion chamber as opposed to just one, so to speak. So that profile is going to look a little bit different. How you're going to want to spread that LSA out is going to be a little bit more different than, say, on a positive displacement car. But at the relatively low boost level that the Hellcats have, which is only 10 to 11 PSI, 11 and a half maybe if you're really deep into or 12 rather if you're really deep into mineshaft air, it doesn't really do you a whole lot of good to try to throw more cam at the car, because all you're doing is you're reducing your dynamic compression ratio at that point, which can be a bit of a problem. You can tighten up the lobe separation angle, get some of that dynamic compression ratio back, but then you're going to have a cam that's got a little bit too much overlap, and you're going to be blowing some boost out the exhaust, which means you're going to be dropping boost, which again means you've got to pulley up just to maintain the boost level that you had. So and the name of the game, honestly, is boost. And I know that you've been told a million different times that, well, if all I've got to do is have a more efficient engine and I can make the same power at a lower boost level, doesn't quite work like that. As a matter of fact, get the car on the drag strip and you'll find that at the same boost level, you may actually go slower. And I'll take that one a step farther. Removing the catalytic converters on a bone stock Hellcat not only doesn't really get you anything, it can actually cost you a little bit of ET oddly enough, because you lose cylinder pressure when you remove the cats. This is a weird situation where, and you never want to talk about back pressure because that's not necessarily a thing, but in the case of a positive displacement supercharger, where you're needing to make power down low, a little bit of quote unquote back pressure isn't a bad thing to create cylinder pressure. And again, I've proven this and I've seen it over and over and over again that removing catalytic converters on a Hellcat that's making roughly stock boost, even though you may have a better efficiency, I put efficiency in quotations, as far as evacuating the cylinder, you do lose cylinder pressure. So the efficiency may be offset by the lack of cylinder pressure. And so there's like no net gain there. At least I haven't seen it yet. You can tune around that, I'm sure. But that's not really the point of this. I mean, if you can tune one, you can tune the other. So anyway, haven't really seen that take place, but that's mainly the reason why. Now, throw more boost at it and you put a supercharger on it, like say a Whipple, where you can actually take advantage of the higher efficiency of the supercharger, make significantly more boost, then yeah, you can sacrifice some boost for a higher efficiency, and that's where the cam can come into play. But when you're talking positive displacement, you're not really worried so much about pumping losses and recovering those. You're really more interested in getting as much air as you can in the most efficient way possible. So that's why you don't see too many cammed Hellcats or too many cammed positive displacement cars to begin with. It kind of goes, and that's the other thing, it goes against what drives positive displacement superchargers pluses versus its minuses. If you start trying to creep positive displacement superchargers RPM range too high, what happens is that where positive displacement superchargers work really well is down low, up through the mid range, and based on the rotor pack itself and their inertial load. In other words, how much does it take to take this 5-pound reciprocating assembly that's turning at 14,000 RPM? How much power does it take to turn that 14,000 into 18,000 RPM? That inertial load becomes higher the higher RPM goes. That's why the higher the RPM run that you want to make will actually and will change the supercharger that you run. So anyway, that's a whole lot of information. Hopefully you're able to understand what I'm talking about with that. Jean-Paul, what was the DA? 0 for the first 1020s, negative, I think it was negative 400 for the other ones, but slightly different air conditions. Riffston saying, hey, B, what's up, man? Let's see, tuner and transmission tune and tune from Hemi Fever. Very good. 1320, minimal reduction, simple things, or it is a cheat to me. Yeah, that's, kind of, the thing with me is that it kind of turns into this cringy thing. You go, oh yeah, well, I took the seats out. Okay. Well, then I took the dash out. I got the door cards out. I've got the windshield wiper motor out of it. I've got this out. I've got that out. At one point, does it quit being a car? I'll give you a perfect example of this. At the drag strip the other night, saw from 40 feet away, 50 feet away, a drop dead gorgeous 69 Camaro. No, I'm sorry, 68 Camaro. Had the vent cards, but still rounded. And so I'm looking at this thing and I'm going, man, that's a really pretty car, until I got closer to it. And you get closer to the thing, you find out that it is a straight up drag race car. It's got sheet metal door cards. It's got a sheet metal dash, just a couple of gauges, stick with a steering wheel, one seat, that was it. But, from a fairly decent range away, the thing looked like a pretty nice street car. And so I got to thinking, man, is it still a Camaro, or is it just a dragster with the shape of a Camaro? I mean, technically speaking, it could be 100% street legal, drive it to and from, insurable, the whole bit. But that's a loophole, man. And the thing is if you've got to find loopholes and you can say, yeah, but you start interjecting things like that into the conversation, it's really not the same. It's really, you lose that richness of it's a street car, and you kind of lose the romance, really. And if you got to stoop to that level, it's just, well, you're stooping to a level, aren't you? Anyway, Hang on just a second. Riff, hey, thank you very much. Saying going to dine to the Hellcat before and after the Hemi Fever tune. Keep us informed, man. Appreciate the contribution, my friend. Thank you very much. Let's say, Riff is saying there is a guy at my track who has a 1320 with a lot of weight reduction. He runs early 11s and late 10s. He went as far as getting one of those 7-pound lithium batteries. Man, I've been seeing a lot of those lately. In fact, I've been seeing a whole lot of those batteries lately, and I thought I was being a little bit cheeky going with just the large capacity lithium for mine, but apparently a lot of folks are going with that 7-pounder, and it seems to be getting the job done. The only thing for me is that I need the extra capacity to run the fans in this thing and the pumps in between rounds on cooldown. So if I had an NA car though, yeah, shit, I'd have that little 7-pounder in there all day long. Interesting, though, to me that so many folks have really started gravitating towards that. Good on them for it, too. Slash is asked, speaking of batteries, is that lightweight Archangel battery still holding up? Like a boss, man. That thing so far for me has been great. So benefit to it, very high cold cranking amps, and it seems to hold up great on cooldowns in between rounds. So pretty sweet stuff. I don't really drive the car a lot, so I do every once in a while throw it on a battery charger, get it up to a nice healthy 14.25 or 14.4 volts and call it good. Patrick's asking, what kind of car is that behind me? That is an early release 2015 Hellcat Challenger. And when I say early, she is actually coming up on her 5-year birthday. Here in about 2 weeks. Speed Freak 93, I agree. I believe true street car means you drive it to and from the track. Yep, full interior and run a number. Anything below 10.0 gets you kicked off the track around here without a cage anyway. Yeah, we're a little bit different down here. You can still run a pretty healthy number without getting punted. A lot of that has to do with safety for the general public. We got a lot of guys that without the use of a track and without that outlet, they'd be out there doing this stuff on the street. And nowadays, 9-second street cars are basically like, I mean, you can't swing a dead cat over your head without bouncing it off of 2 or 3 of them. So they're everywhere. And the safest and best place to do that is at the drag strip. Personally, I do not do nothing else anymore on the street. I used to do a ton of street racing, ton of roll racing, ton of ridiculous roll racing, as a matter of fact. Yeah, not so much anymore. Yeah, keeping all that stuff to the absolute bare minimum, just in terms of data logging, things like that. But as far as actually street racing, you'll never see me doing that. You'll find me at the drag strip. If you want to find me, that is where I will be. Philip saying, I'm trying to get a 94R Archangel battery, but they are always out of stock. They are always going to be out of stock too, because they are a very popular upgrade. And as far as replacing a consumable part, yeah, they're about double the cost and then some, I think, of a factory battery. But man, it makes sense when you've got a battery that just doesn't weigh that much, but has the capacity. So if y'all don't know what we're talking about, check out my Archangel battery. I've got a kind of a bit of a video on that thing. Patrick saying, I have no idea what he's talking about. I guess we're talking about the battery still. Let's see. Samuel Jack said, I'm getting ready to buy a Hellcat. What should I watch out for? SMS. What year should I get? So, okay. So here's the thing. I would say one of the best years to look for is going to be a 2017. 2015, early release cars like mine seem to be fine. Late 15, early 16s had problems with the superchargers. Late 16, early 17 got an upgraded drive shaft. And I believe it was 18 when they went to no more speed density or no more mass air meter in the car. So yeah, somewhere between 17 and 18 would be my suggestion. Excuse me. Let's see. Christian is asking, what would you do to make a manual Hellcat more aggressive, like a GT500, maybe a gear swap and a pulley? I would say pulley change for sure. Go with a 285 upper, but I would probably look at putting a 390 gear in the car, even though it comes with a 370. That 228 first gear, 226, whatever it is just way too much. The car weighs too much to have a gear that is that long. I would go 390 gear, 285 upper, tune for sure, and that would be my start. Go with a Barton shifter, and I think you would be real happy with that setup. Rip saying, so Speed Freak 93, I'll let you know how much power I gain with the Hemi Fever tune. I believe the transmission tune will help the most. It will. White Knuckle checking in, saying, what's up going on, Professor B? I like it. Got the arm flex and the thumbs up. I like it. Symphonics asking, did you watch the GT500 press reveal in Nevada this week? No, I didn't watch the reveal. I was actually very tied up this week. This past week, actually the past couple of weeks have been nutty with me. But I do have my opinions on that car. I do have my opinions on that car, the way that it relates to Mopar from the 392 through the Hellcat family of cars as well. I'm not shocked by what the car ran. I'm still very much concerned about durability with that transmission. However, if it can survive that type of press release and they're just beating the living hell out of the car, that's great. But again, that's not your average daily owner of the car on a drag pack, dragging that thing to their local and running the piss out of it. And, is Ford going to warrant that car? I've got questions and I've got some criticisms of FCA in light of the GT500. And I will probably be putting together a video specific to that here pretty soon. But, either that or, I may circle back around to that topic in this chat, but just keep this in mind. Look, the GT500 is an awesome car, but it does represent a departure from what most folks would consider to be, let's just dive into it. Okay. So from what most folks would consider to be a norm, the walking around norm, but those people are giving their opinion of the norm, so to speak. I hate when people do that or do this. Drives me nuts. Anyway, what is the new norm is really what you need to start looking at. What is the new normal? I don't like the twisty gear knob thing. It's too clinical. It's too sanitary for me. And I don't like that. I need something a little bit more organic. I need a little bit more flesh and blood with this car. I don't like the flappy paddle thing. Even though this thing's got them, I so rarely use them. And even when I do use them, it's such a novelty. So by saying that, really, what's the difference between having a turning knob thing and a gear shift lever when I never really change gears with the car unless I'm doing a burnout? And I never use the flappy paddles in my car. I'm always driving it around in automatic mode. And if you're always driving the Mustang around in automatic mode and it acts like an automatic, well, if it wobbles and it quacks, what do you call it, right? So I'm not changing my opinion of the car or of what I think that car is actually capable of in the real world. But what I am saying is that as the new normal, the other manufacturers really need to look at this thing and understand its place. Also, in the whole hierarchy, putting that car up against a Hellcat, up against a Red Eye, the Demon doesn't really count in this because they don't make the Demon anymore. It's out of production, doesn't exist as far as the world is concerned. The world's looking past it. It's already looking at the GT500. It's already looking at the Vet. So how is it going to compare? And the other thing too is, how does the rest of the lineup look as far as pony cars? I mean, we've got the ZL1 that's in the mix, which, we knew that thing was going to get smoked by the GT500, but you can get a true 6-speed in the ZL1, which makes the ZL1 simply more attractive to me as somebody that, well, I'm familiar with that type of a platform. What about the red eye? Well, you can say the red eye doesn't really compete with the GT500 because it's not a track-oriented car. And when I say track, I'm now talking about a closed circuit. Well, yeah, kind of. But when you take into account that the Mustang can run the kind of quarter mile times that it can run on a stock tire versus what the red eye has to have to even get close to those kind of numbers is one thing. And then you look at an on-track potential performance, we're talking about just, when I say on track, I really should say back road. And even then it doesn't really matter because to me, handling at this stage of the game is irrelevant. But, the feel of the car, the feedback of the car, probably superior on the Ford side as well. But you know what? It should be, because these cars are now coming up on their 5th year of production with no updates, and certainly with no updates on the NA side, which is probably more damning than anything else. But yet here we are. We've got the Mustang GT, which is the darling of the aftermarket. You've got the Camaro SS, which realistically with heads, cam, intake, I mean, your basic garden variety hot rod, weekend under a tree, you can run high 10s with a stock converter, mid 10s with a converter swap and tunes and all this other stuff. Anyway, long story short, the NA guys on the 392 end are really getting the shite end of the stick here. It's the slowest of the group now, which is a bit ironic when you consider the fact that it was the fastest of the group when it was released before you had true big horsepower, big muscle cars that were being released. How quickly that can happen. And just over the course of, say, 4 or 5 years, you go from hero to zero in this game. And I think that that's really more the point. That Mopar doesn't have anything really worth talking about. You might say, well, what about the red eye? Well, the red eye is ridiculously expensive. Even if you're in the market for a Hellcat, you may not pony up the kind of money it's going to take to get a red eye. Not to mention, there ain't a damn thing wrong with the Hellcat. Hell, the Hellcat is what set the table for the big horsepower wars. Provided that you don't count the Super Snake, which, who does nowadays? But that is the original big horsepower kind of factory production, but not really factory production car. Boutique produced, if you want to look at it a different way. But anyway, mass produced, you got the Hellcat, and that pretty much wrecked shop for everybody ever since. But this is the modern iteration of that car. This is Mustang kind of taking over their top spot, which they've pretty much always had in one way, shape, or form, if for no other reason than they kept the genre alive for as long as they did. So you can't fault Mustang in that respect for the job that they've done. But I'm going to take this Mustang discussion into a different area, and that's going to be the Mustang versus the Mustang. In this case, GT500 versus GT350. Overwhelmingly, in other words, all of them. So much so that I almost want to holler out conspiracy at this point. Tongue in cheek on that last comment, by the way. But how is it that every journo that's out there that has driven the GT500 says how amazing that car is in a straight line, although they have absolutely no freaking clue how to get the thing to go from 0 to the end of a quarter mile properly? Freaking journalist, dude. Anyway, with their embarrassing lack of skills, but they will sit there and talk about the GT350 in terms of being overall a better car, a better driver's car, etc. How do you know it's a better driver's car, you idiot effing journo, if you've got a car capable of running 1070s, 1080s, and you can't get any better than a freaking 1030 out of the car? And then you got guys like me that do this stuff on a regular basis, can get behind the wheel, and in any conditions with all the technology involved in that car, it basically does everything itself, get out there and run solid 10-second quarter mile times all day long with this thing. I get it. You're not really into this car hobby. You're not into the drag racing thing. You're just more into the fact that you're a journalist. Well, fantastic, journo. I'm glad you're having a ball with all of this. But let's get back to the topic. I think I went ahead and sidebarred that enough. The fact of the matter is that the GT350 is being injected into this conversation as opposed to the GT350 being forgotten about. The GT500 was really a car that was supposed to make everybody seemingly forget about the GT350, I guess. But so far as I can tell, it's only made a whole lot of people long for the GT350 and basically say that the GT500 is more or less it's so many things that I'm wanting to say here. Basically, a GT500 is great in a straight line, but it's never going to compete with the GT350 as being a great driver's car. They've more or less damned it coming into this. And the funny thing about this is that I have heard things about the GT500 being said, well, it's so great in a straight line. It's got a drag race mode. Okay. It's got all of that, but it doesn't have a manual transmission and it doesn't have a true automatic transmission. It's got this dual clutch transmission thing that we don't know what the durability is going to be like in 5 years. Is it really a drag race car? Why do you keep journos? Why do you keep saying that the GT350 is so much more of a driver's car? Is there something you're not telling us about the GT500? Anyway, let me get back to it. But yeah, there's some things that I've left out of that bit of a rant, if you want to call it that. But suffice it to say that I'm not 100% sold on the concept just yet. I'm sure that there's a lot more to that car than meets the eye. I just don't see myself getting so lathered up over it that I'm going to take my Hellcat, which I do truly love, and that I do truly feel like has a significant place in history as being one of the very first Hellcats that were produced to be sold. It set a certain bar and it has a certain place in history where the new GT500 doesn't. And you don't like saying that, and it hurts to say that because GT500 is supposed to mean something. And unfortunately, it's not meaning what it's supposed to mean. So anyway, getting back to it. Ripped is saying he's got to go fetch his daughter. He's going to try to make it back in. Very nice. Let's see. Ruben's saying, what's happening, B? Watching from California. Man, I miss California. Hope everything's going well out there for my brothers and sisters on the West Coast. Stay the hell away from those fires, man. Sean, hey, thank you very much. Saying with the $5 contribution, saying nice 1029 to back up your 1028. 1019 is still possible with a 147 60 foot and winter air density. Yeah, man, it's coming. We'll see. So one of the things that I was kind of hoping for, and this is kind of getting back. Sorry, I've got to. Let's see. Here we go. I was kind of hoping for a little bit better. I was trying to better my ET, but the air just wasn't there. Rich is saying, so am I. His Hellcat has been idling strangely. If I listen to the motor itself, it sounds okay, but the sound from the exhaust sounds weird. What do you think it could be? No telling what it could be. Easy places to start. Check the oil, check the air filter, check to make sure there's no leaks, anything like that. Make sure that you don't have any check engine lights, obviously, but I doubt that you do, or else you'd mention it. Every once in a while, mine will will start a little bit weird, but all of the Mopars that I've ever driven, every once in a while, will be a little bit weird on startup. But I don't know. I would definitely check that out because there's no real reason for it to have any real issues. Check one other thing. What may end up popping up would be a butterfly valve code. You may have one that's sticking, but typically that'll throw a code pretty quickly. But I don't know. Without being there, it's hard to tell, brother. Slash is saying 18 Scat Pack. I know Pike's Performance are tuning masters. Can they do a turbo nitro setup too? Yeah, Alex can tune pretty much anything, man. But I would make sure that you have got a very sound, very well-built bottom end and a transmission that can handle it before you did anything else. Speed Freak, any suggestion for drive mode selections for first-time tracking the Hellcat? Sport mode? Yep. Sport mode, traction control. Yeah, the first few times, leave traction control on. Just put everything in sport mode. Do a nice just clean up on the tires, get them a little bit warm, get out there, stage it, and slow roll into the throttle so you don't light the tires up, and you'll be off to the races, my friend. Let's see. Christian saying, I didn't pay much attention to the GT350s until recently. Super awesome looking and definitely unique, but I'm seeing a lot of videos of blown engines under 10,000 miles. Feel sorry for those guys. Yeah, so okay, so everybody's got problems, right? You've got cams and lifters and things like that with the Mopars. The Ford GT350, I've heard issues, heard reports of guys popping motors with those things. You know, I don't even know what to say about that. You're trying to get an engine to reliably run to 8,500 RPM. I don't even know what to say about that. It's a tall order. It's a lot to ask. And if the guys are out beating the hell out of the cars, they're not letting them warm up. They're not. It's not as simple as you might think. And unfortunately, what works in a lab doesn't work in real world conditions. You start getting guys get in the cars and they just abuse them, and they don't even realize they're abusing them. They just really don't have any mechanical sympathy. That's really where I think a lot of these engine failures are coming from, but it's a little bit difficult to have that conversation with the owner of a car who doesn't know any better when you say, yeah, you can't get on it when the car is cold, and they go, well, that's when it runs the best. And anyway, long story short, there's a lot more to that story than just the engines popping. I think that there's more to it, and it sucks that they are, because it's a great engine, but everybody's got a problem. Everybody's got an Achilles heel. You don't hear a whole lot of people talking shit too much anymore. In fact, people that talk the most shit are actually Mopar people against themselves, which is another topic altogether. Let's see. Ruben's asking, you mentioned your 1047 was a drag pack setup. Does that consist of a 309 gear? No, it did not. When I ran a 1047, the car had the stock 262 gear, same wheels and tires that are on it now. Did not have a trans tune, did have the rear seat, and had the original air filter. In fact, it had this air filter in it. Just so happens I still have the original air filter from the car in my 3482 LX 3482 that is box. Anyway, that was about as basic as you can get in the car, and yeah, it ran that number, and it was a lot more stock than it is now. Sean is asking, dollar for dollar, GT500 red eye or C8? C8, 100% of the time, twice on Sunday. X is saying, super cool to see the stream up tonight. Your boy Beto dropped out of the race, by the way. Let's talk about how embarrassing that 10.6 for the GT500 is. Mini Hellcat's been running that since 2015. So, yeah, so here's the deal, man. The fact of the matter is, I mean, this is a early release GT500, early release Hellcat, and it's consistently run mid-10s on a drag pack since I bought it, in one way, shape, or form, either in the heat running 1060s with a 309 gear and on 100 octane. It's run consistent 1050s and low like 1060, so high 1050s, low 1060s in the heat. It's now consistently running 1030s and 1020s. It's about 50-50 there in cooler weather. So yeah, I mean, the funny thing about the Mustang is that it is supposed to be so much better, but is it really? I guess you could probably say, well, it might do better from a roll because of the weight, because it does technically have more power. You could say that it may do better on a drag pack, but how much better? And the other thing is, by how much is that victory going to be? It's going to be a driver's race. And then the Ford argument will be, well, it goes around a closed circuit so much better. It'll embarrass a Hellcat. It'll embarrass a Red Eye. Really? You've got so much infighting right now between the people that have been talking about that GT500. And it's like I was talking about earlier. Everybody else says the GT350 is by rights a better car, not only because it's better balanced, both technically, literally and figuratively, but also because you can get it in a manual transmission. You can get it in the way that all of the GT500-ish cars used to be. So where are you at? You know, the funny thing about the GT500 is it makes life a living hell for 392 owners and GT owners. And it doesn't really pose the type of threat against the Hellcat and the Red Eye that you would think that it would. And then you go, well, what about the ZL1? Mace, don't forget about the ZL1. Well, I'm not forgetting about the ZL1. It's just that it's not really part of the conversation anymore. Isn't it odd that the ZL1 still seems to fall away when people start talking about performance cars? Immediately people will start to call out the Red Eye or the Hellcat, I should say, and sometimes even forget about the Red Eye existing. Odd that the Hellcat is still 5 years deep into this run, the yardstick that everybody compares their car to. ZL1s are quick. The cool thing about the ZL1 though is that you can get it with a true automatic or you can get it with a 6-speed manual. And they take to mods very well. So it doesn't take much to get a lot of performance and a lot of power out of a ZL1. And it's the least expensive of the group. Let's all be honest here. And some may argue it's actually one of the better looking varieties. But in reality, it does fall out of sorts when you start looking at the actual performance numbers that they're talking about with the GT500. But they'll always still go back and compare the ZL1 with the GT350 because those are the two that are the most easily comparable because one's got a manual transmission and the other one's got the DSG. We'll just see how much or how close or how far away those cars are when you put them in real world situations. I just hope that they have a GT350R waiting in the wings to take on the winner of that skirmish. I have a feeling that might not go as well for the GT500. Let's see. Doggo's saying, I love my 2019 Chally Scat Pack. Wide body. They're nice cars. Doggo's saying, it's basically a wide body Hellcat without the supercharger and has better suspension. I like them. Sean's asking, what was your true mile an hour at the track last night? Seems about 2 mile an hour low. Your dash mile an hour was about right. It was about 132 and change based on data. That's a conservative estimate, probably more like 133 and change, but I have actually talked to the track manager and they are going to be resetting the cubes at the end of the track. Looks like the way that they're set up, the right lane, which is typically the lane that I run in, has had some issues with mile an hour at the 8th mile being a little high and at the quarter mile being a little bit low. Let's see. Thank you again, Sean. I appreciate it. Let's see. 4x4 launch. Junkie, are you in Houston? Yeah, I am. Let's see. Symphonic, 75 grand to spend. Base GT500, Hellcat Red Eye, or well-equipped C8 3LT Z51. Jeez, dude. That doesn't come out to a very easy thing. So if it's me, and I'm walking with 75 grand, bro, I would have to probably, and I hate to even say this out loud, probably go with the Corvette. And the reason why I would go with a Corvette is because, actually, I take it back. If I had 75 grand to spend, what I would do is I would go test drive all three of them. I would then wait until you could rent a rent a Corvette or a GT500. And I would rent one of those things for about 2 days. And I would drive them and spend as much time as you possibly had. The GT500 would probably be the most fun initially, but I think the Vet would be more of an impact car, and I think the Vet would be more endearing. If I'm buying the car to keep, I would probably say that the upside on the GT500 is that GT500s always keep their value, whereas Corvettes do not. But if I'm buying the car to keep and drive, I think the Corvette is probably the better play there. Let's see. Junkie Chan saying, I got a 392 TA right now, but really want a Hellcat. What would you guys say on getting a used Hellcat? Any tips on things to look out for? Tips and things to look out for when buying a used Hellcat are, man, look for any signs of the car being abused. Make sure that the car has been well maintained. My car was extremely well maintained by its original owner. Thumbs up to you for that. But my biggest, I guess my biggest takeaway would be to buy one that is stock. Do not buy somebody's modified Hellcat unless you know the history of the car and the history of the person that's selling it. I would hate to see anybody jump right in the middle of one of these things only to start having problems. And typically, if you find one that's heavily modded, there's one of two reasons why they're getting rid of it, and only one of them works well in your favor. So at any rate, that's what I would look for. Try to find a very stock one. Low mileage cars, it depends on where you're at, but it doesn't really matter the mileage, because if it's well maintained, these Hellcats are incredibly robust. And again, that's the big difference between a Hellcat and any of the 392 or any of the NA cars, is that from the factory, you're getting a much more robust platform than you are with the 392. So you got an HP90 transmission versus an HP70. You might say, what does that mean? Well, HP70s are prone to burning up clutches, prone to breaking. I've actually broken one myself with a very mild transmission tune, I might add. So HP90s have been known to take well over 1,000 horsepower to the rear wheels indefinitely, whereas HP70s will start to fail at about the 530 horsepower-ish range, especially 530 pound-feet of torque to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno. That's where you'll start to see them slip a little bit. So something to think about there. Engine itself is significantly more robust in terms of pistons and rods over the 392. Everything else is pretty much the same, though. 392 is actually a pretty stout engine, provided you don't expect too much out of it. You can, in terms of throwing boost at it, nitrous, stuff like that, just leave it alone, and you'll be in great shape. They're real snappy, real torquey, but and in some cases are actually a little bit more fun to drive than a bone stock Hellcat. But anyway, getting ahead of myself, getting side by side here. Let's see. William is asking, what do you think Dodge is going to come out with? The next current platform is kind of dated. It's very dated. Makes it very difficult to maintain my Mopar guy status when Mopar doesn't even maintain their Mopar guy status. But so far, the latest news that I understand to be correct, or at least accurate, is that FCA re-upped their license agreement with the LX platform from Mercedes-Benz through the 2023 model year, if I'm not mistaken. Initially, it was 2018, then they re-upped it to 2020, and then they bumped that to 2022 or 2023. So that's kind of where we're at with that now. And we'll see. I don't know. Good question, though. Slash is asking, I think I remember your 392's fastest quarter mile was 11:38. That is correct. You remember what the fastest 8th mile was? I think it was a 7:20. Was it a 7:20? I think it was a 7:20. Christian is asking, do you think the whole wide body thing is just a fad? They look pretty sweet, but I hope to get a Hellcat after graduating school and keep it forever. If it were me and you're looking to keep it forever, go with the regular body. I like the wide bodies, though. I think they're dead sexy to look at. And they're really pretty. Is it a fad? I don't think it's just a fad. I think it's a justifiable look for the car. And, it's not really polarizing. Initially, I wasn't a big fan of them, but the more I got to look at them, the more I was around them, the more I liked them. I prefer the regular body over the wide body, but man, I don't know. I got a buddy of mine, David, who's got a blue wide body that is freaking sick gorgeous. So, hush, hush. Don't want to say that too loud over here, but yeah, I like them both. And buy what you want. Don't worry about what's fatty. If you're keeping it forever, buy exactly what you want. Let's see. Sean's asking, somebody's saying that Shawnee beat him to a question. I like it. Sean's asking, how much weight should the next platform be lighter for you to be satisfied yet still be a muscle car? Sean's checking in at 3,800 pounds. I'm a little bit heavier. I don't know. I'd say 39 would be about the limit. Try to keep it under 4,000 pounds. It's a little bit difficult. But, for NA, I'd say 3,800 would be the max number. For boosted, I'd say 3,950 would be about the number that I would look for. Anytime you add power, though, you have to add weight. I'm not sure, though, if an HP 90 is significantly heavier than an HP 70, and pretty much everything after that is more or less the same. In fact, all the suspension bits are basically the same. So where else are you going to gain or lose pounds? Well, it's going to be in that supercharger and all the extra crap that it takes to run the thing. Pumps, lines, coolant, all that. Anyway, it adds up. You can't add power without adding weight, so give it 150 pounds. You got about 100 pounds for the supercharger, 50 pounds for the rest of the stuff, and let her eat. But she does need to lose at least 300 pounds. Let's see. X is asking, do you run spacers on your rear wheels? No, I don't. I got some Demon Replica 20 by 10.5, 20 millimeter offset, 305, 30, 20, and I have to use 5/16 spacer. I'm not sure why you would need to. But then again, I did clearance the back portion of my my fender liner. So you may need to do that. I don't know if you really have to run spacers, but 305, 35, 20s, depending on which 305, 35, 20 you're running too. Keep in mind that there's some 305s that are actually measuring out to 315. I run Nittos, so that might be part of the reason why too. Ken is asking, on a Hellcat, is it a bad idea to do a pass when the oil temp is 219 degrees, engine temp and trans normal, and also how many passes until you change your oil? I don't go over about 50 or 60 passes before I change my oil. And I don't make a pass if the engine oil temperature is typically over 212 degrees. 219 probably won't hurt anything. With the stock thermostat, I mean, they typically run oil temps at around 230-ish. These cars do run higher oil temps than some other cars you might be used to, but it's one of the reasons why it's got a 40 weight oil from the factory. But yeah, I mean, you're just not going to get the best performance out of it at that level. They actually like oil temps around, say, 175, 185. Philip's asking, what do you think the optimum coolant temp for making a pass in the Scat Pack with a stock tune? 165 degrees. Actually, 165 to 175. Symphonics, all Chevy needs to do is drop the LT5 into Camaro ZL1. Yep, I can agree with that. Christian, you cold-blooded. So Chris saying, don't forget about the ZL1. Too bad its own brand has. Cheers to that. Let's see. HU37 saying the best thing about the ZL1 is the Camaros don't keep their value well. You get a used ZL1 for the same price as a used 392. That is true. Junkie Chan saying thanks for the info. Shawnee's checking out. Saying thank you next time. Appreciate the contribution, brother. Let me know when you get that drive shaft installed, or you get started on that drive shaft install. JG saying, hey, brother, great knowledge as always. Any news on a possible CUDA or a supercharged 426 for the last year Challenger for the change? Electric hybrid coming soon. I haven't heard anything about a hybrid, especially for a modified version of the LX platform. So that's really not on the table right now. Plus, it's just not in FCA's DNA, I don't think, right now. Man, look, the 426 thing has been getting kicked down the road. I mean, that can is just getting beat to death. I don't know if they are ever going to get around to doing that. I can tell you that I would prefer to see an all aluminum version of the 392 before I would want to see a 426. I am afraid that a revised intake manifold, along with obviously a different camshaft, different rotating assembly, all of that is going to cost money and take time to develop. Now, that being said, if FCA has in fact re-upped their license on the LX platform, or at least a derivative of the LX platform through 2023, then what we're going to be looking at is plenty of time for FCA to get the ball rolling on getting a 426 greenlit and sent through and have it approved, emissions tested, durability tested, and all of that. Here's my dilemma with that, and it's my dilemma with any 426 stroker, and that is just compounded by any 440 stroker that you see out there. And that is rod to stroke angle ratio issues and longevity issues with those types of setups. Keep in mind one thing, the 392 is a stroked small block. It's still a small block. It is not a tall deck small block. It is not a big block. It is still a small block. Same way an LS is. So as you may be aware, there is the LS7, which is, the 427. Great engine, fairly durable. I think that the 426 could be a great engine and fairly durable, but I don't know if it will be a great engine and be fairly durable long-term with the costing that Mopar and FCA have got to put in play. In other words, they got to make money on this thing, and I don't know what kind of or how they would be able to warrant that engine based on weight of the vehicle, RPM requirements, things like that. Thing is you've got to be able to show a significant gain in power with that 427 or 426 rather over the 392, and there's, I'm afraid, not a huge delta there to overcome in terms of power. I just think that you're going to maybe get a 426 to a reasonable 530 horsepower, which would still be very impressive nonetheless. Maybe 540 horsepower, but really any more than that, and you start to sacrifice what makes the 392 so great, which is being so snappy all the time. I think there's other areas long-term where Dodge needs to focus their efforts. Again, all aluminum 392 would be great. It would shave about 100 pounds off of that engine, which again is part of a weight savings program. But anything else aside that, just can't really get on board with it. Donnie's saying Dodge always expensive. You got to pay the Mopar tax, brother. Danny's saying, I'm eyeing a red eye. Wow, that thing is at 80 grand, but rumors on ACR Challenger got me waiting. That actually, there already has been an ACR Challenger. It just was never really greenlit for public consumption. And that was back in 2008 or 10. Hell, I can't remember. It's been seemingly a lifetime ago, but they have had the ACR edition. We'll see if they actually come through with another one. But again, okay, so just like they had so let's talk about that for just a second, because, you know, Danny brings up a really good point. What about the ACR Challenger? Well, what is going to make the ACR Challenger so much better? You know, we already have the 1320. Is the ACR going to be, you know, because ACR is American Club Racer. Is that going to be a, is that going to be, what do you call it? Like a road race version of it? I thought the TA was going to be the road race version of it, because that's the one that harkens back to SCCA racing, which is closed circuit racing. See how I'm getting a little bit confused and how easy it can be to get confused. If they do have an ACR version of it, does that mean that it gets maybe an aluminum 392? Maybe it gets an aluminum 426? I don't know. But I can tell you this, if it's nothing more than stickers and badging and a set of wheels, that's going to be a big problem for me, because that is just going to be more marketing crap as opposed to engineering crap. I need the engineering. I'm more engineering based, and I need to see something really more substantial than just, you know, trying to hearken to a marketing ploy as opposed to giving the people something for their money. Not to mention, what's the damn thing going to cost? Got to take that into consideration too. Phil's checking out. Say goodnight. Thank you very much. Thank you, Philip. Let's see. X is saying it hits the fender going towards the front of the car. I did the mod that you showed on a video a few months back. The nittos are round out on the edges, so that's probably why I'm running BFG Comp 2. Let's see. Hits the fender going towards the front of the car. Really? Interesting. Might just be something with those specific wheels in general, because my replicas, I mean, y'all saw where it was rubbing on mine, and I just kind of moved mine back, and it ends up solving the problem. So I don't know. But I will say that every one of these things is a little bit different. So what you may need to do, I know some guys actually go in there, remove the liner and massage that area back a little bit with a mallet. So yeah, you may have to take it that far. And again, some guys have had to do that. Christian's checking in saying the 426 hype is going stale. Yeah, it's been stale for a while, brother. Yeah, it's a sweet idea and a cool engine, but only if Dodge actually puts it in a car and make an SRT 426 so the NA guys can have something to rave about. Brother, I have been singing that tune for a long time, and I want to get excited about the NA cars, but right now, Mopar's sucking hind tit when it comes to that. And you might say, yeah, well, the Scat Pack or the 1320 is significantly quicker than a Camaro or what have you, like a Super Sport. And you go, yeah, but man, the upside on that Camaro, if you want to start talking potential in terms of mods, is significantly higher. So I call it a wash. Now it's just tied for last place. And I don't know. If nothing else, it's looking at last place. You know, last place is a lot more in focus than first place. And let's just leave it at that. Yeah, the NA guys have got to have something a bit more substantial to rave about. If I still had my 392, what would I buy that would be a significant reason to upgrade my car other than a Hellcat from Mopar? Can somebody please tell me what I would pick up? How am I supposed to stay engrossed and engaged and enjoy this lifestyle of all that is Mopar, right? How do I upgrade from where I'm at? Right now, if you own a 392, you're stuck. You're hella stuck. And because you got the Hellcat, which is the only thing that you're looking up at, but if you don't want a Hellcat, if you're like, piss on superchargers, I don't like them, they add too much weight, too complex. Can't even change the spark plugs on the damn thing. I want naturally aspirated, the way God intended it to be. Fantastic, bro. Listen, I get it. I'm right there with you. Except I'm not, because I got a Hellcat. Anyway, you know what I'm saying, man. You know where I'm at with this NA stuff. I love it. But the problem is as a Mopar guy, I've got nothing to look forward to. I've got nothing to look at. You might say, well, neither does anybody in Chevrolet. Well, yeah, maybe not. But I mean, realistically, you don't have to look up from an LS, because to look up from an LS just means to look up part numbers on cams and exhaust and other things that you know that car is going to react extremely well with. And then that's what you get to play with your LT or whatever, you know, contraption you got. It has its own set of challenges. I get that, but they've already been overcome. So nothing really to worry about there. Whereas you don't really have that option with the 392. I mean, yeah, you can go with a cam or a ported intake or what have you, but then just the cost alone of that is, well, it's prohibitive to say the least. And to go with a stroker setup is, I mean, you spend that kind of money on a scat pack, man, you need to have your really just a real solid sit down with yourself, coming to Jesus, because at that point you could have had a car that will always outrun a 392 base car, which is a Hellcat. So again, it sucks. Ford's got it in spades. You've got the GT looking right up at the GT 350, which is looking right up at the GT 350R. Yeah, GT 350s all carry the same engine, but you have different trim levels, different performance levels that you can keep looking up to. And if you get to the very top of that, then you're at the top of the food chain and you know it. The problem is that you've got a bunch of different flavors of vanilla with the 392 base cars, which sucks. So where do you go from here? I'm not sure, but I would love to see something substantial start to come from Mopar soon, because if Mopar is not going to stay enthusiastic about that car and about that engine and about that, well, let me rephrase that. The engine they seem to be very enthusiastic about because they're making them as fast as they can sell them and selling them as fast as they can make them. But if they're not going to get excited about the NA platform, then why in the heck should I get excited about it? Why would I ever get excited about something that is only sort of upgradable, only to the point where it still can't compete with its next higher trim level car? That sucks. It just, I don't know. It's a little bit irksome, and it's one of the reasons why, man, to be honest, for my next project, I have already ruled out anything Mopar. That's just the way that it is. HU is saying, oh, wait a minute, almost passed up Dana. Saying Steeda NA Gen 3 Mustang with the 10-speed bolt-ons, drag pack, and full rear suspension with 409 gears, runs in the high 10s and keeps dropping. You better believe it. And that car will still keep getting quicker and quicker and quicker as the DAs this year drop and drop and drop. So just saying, I don't know what kind of weight reduction they're messing with on that thing, but yeah, and actually with 409 gear, that's the way that car should have come from the factory, with that engine and the 10-speed auto. Yeah, needs a little bit more gear for sure. HU37 saying, with relatively strong Challenger and Charger sales, there's little reason to come out with a 426. That's kind of what I was saying earlier. There isn't enough profit to develop another engine. Actually, there's more than enough profit to develop another engine. There's just very little motivation to develop another engine. They're already selling everything that every 392 that they make, they sell. And there's a demand for it. And what can I tell you? If the demand is still there for what they're making now, yeah, they may see a reason to upgrade something in the future, but in the meantime, the tooling is there for the 392. They ain't going to stop. And that's something else that pisses me off to no end. We're just talking about, Mopar tax and stuff like that. They've been making the 392 now for years. Have you priced a 392 engine lately? That thing shouldn't be the cost that it is. Just Google it and make sure you're sitting on the pot when you do. Dana's asking, do you think a 392 with a 410 in the rear end and fully bolted, I'm guessing you're asking full bolt-on, can run high 10s like the Mustang? Not with a 410 gear. Actually, you would want something along the lines of, and they don't make one, it's a 333 or a 323. Something in the mid 320s to mid 330s is what you would be looking at, ideally with the 8-speed automatic. And some weight reduction. I mean, hell, you get some weight reduction on the thing, and yeah, it'll run 10. Chaos is checking in. Chaos of the unicorns, man. I love that. Saying, can we get an ACR Chally with a ridiculous wing like the old Daytona Chargers for the hell of it? Seems to be the trend lately. At least I would find it hilarious. Man, at this point, you ain't getting an engine, so it might as well be something stupid. It'll probably look more like the what's his name's car, the car that's campaigning the guy that's campaigning the red eye in one of the closed circuit. I don't even know anymore. God, I just don't keep up with this crap anymore. I get too bored with it. But anyway, yeah, there's some. It probably sure, screw it, why not? Let's see. X is saying will do, talking about his rubbing issue. He says, I'm going to try 305 30 20 later before taking a hammer to my car. 305 30 might, if you can find the size, might give you an issue. I'm not sure. Donald Power saying, hi, Mr. Mason. What's up, Donald? Junkie Chance saying, I am in the Katy area. Is there any group or meets you guys meet up? Not really. Not so much me. I stick to the track, and but every once in a while there's a meet that I will kind of wander into. You just never know where I'm going to show up. I'm kind of like that. I'll just kind of pop in on things. Let's see. Cal is asking, can you stroke a 392 Scat Pack? Is it worth trying to do? You can. There's guys that do 426 strokers and 440 strokers. I like the 426 more than I do the 440, and I like the 392 more than I like the 426 from a durability, rod stroke angle, things like that. But that being said, both of them work. Both of them work well. I really wouldn't expect a whole lot out of the strokers, really much more than, you know, on a Mustang dyno around 520-ish to the rear wheels, maybe 530, 540 on a dyno jet. It sounds like a lot of power, but when you consider what a stock Hellcat puts down, it's not even in the same ballpark. Realistically, it's still going to be at least 100 to 150 horsepower down from what a stock Hellcat will put down. The only reason why I'm dragging the Hellcat into this conversation is money, which is always part of the conversation, right? Everybody's on a budget. So if you, and again, where I come from is this: if you have a Scat Pack and it is all but paid off, if you were willed a Scat Pack by a dead relative, if you've got a Scat Pack that you don't really owe that much more on, that is more or less, it's worth a lot more than you owe on it, and you want to stay involved in the car and you want to throw some cash at it, it is a viable thing to do. But you need to understand that that same money could go towards buying a Hellcat of the same year, and you would instantaneously get quite a few benefits, none the least of which is resale value when you get ready to get rid of the Hellcat, if you ever do, because the Hellcat will always and forever be a Hellcat, which is significant. The second is just you just get more durable parts. And you know, how much power can you get out of a 427? I mean, you know, same thing. I mean, it's all fairly relative. So you figure, you know, just through displacement, cam upgrade, a couple other things like intake manifolds, you have to figure out where you're going to want that power to come in at. But you know, in and of itself, 100 horsepower shouldn't be too far outside the range of possibility to the flywheel. 80 horsepower odd to the rear wheels. X is checking in and saying 392 should be way less than they are, and it's been around since 2011. Will Ferguson's got the 2 thumbs up. I like it. Yeah, that's part of the bitch of it too, isn't it? I mean, what in the hell, the balls that they have to be charging this kind of money for those engines, man. I'm telling you, again, it goes back to that. It's so hard to be Mopar guy. It's so unimaginably difficult to maintain that mentality of yes, Mopar or no car, when Dodge is basically ripping you a new asshole every time you want to try to buy something from your car, for your car. Perfect example. I'll go back to this air filter. It's got some freaking dust bunnies on it. Mala air filter, LX3482. This is the this is the air filter that is in my car right now. This is the one that you can find on Amazon for about $25, $28. If you've got Prime, free shipping. If you don't, you might be in the hole for another $5 for shipping. Maybe. Anyway, that's what it is. Mama makes the filters for the Hellcats, specifically for the Hellcat. And by the way, that's one thing is I always do run my car with the air filter in the car. So Mopar is asking for the same filter. If you go to a dealership, you will, in some cases, be lucky to get out the door at $50. In most cases, you'll be out the door at like $62 unless you've got somebody that's giving you a good deal. That is double the cost of what I can get the thing online for. Why in the hell am I getting ripped apart on that kind of a part? That is a maintenance part, man. And you're making it to where I can't go through Mopar to buy maintenance parts. It is embarrassing to say the least, which makes me think that I am getting ripped off when I go buy a car from Mopar. And you might say, oh, well, that's disassociative. You can't say that you're spending X for a filter, Y for the car. Well, I say, why not? Yeah, I'm in the same damn building and I'm buying a part that I could get somewhere else for literally half. The whole Mopar thing and how much these things have been costing over the years, it really does, it pains me to say this, but it's pushing me out of the Mopar fan life. I mean, I've got my Hellcat. I love me some Mopar in that I love the idea of Mopar, doing things differently, doing things, I guess you can say their own way or whatever the case is. But the reality is that there are alternatives. And when you've got no aftermarket support, number one, number two, no support from Mopar, no direct injection, no nothing like that. When you have that type of mentality coming from FCA, only to have them basically fleece your ass on maintenance parts and then have the audacity to decline warranty claims basically at will and not want to admit when they do have specific problems, that's a problem for me. And again, I'm not trying to say that I'm never going to buy another Dodge product. I'm just saying that of all the problems that I've seen and of all the issues that I've seen come up with these cars and the way that they just tend to rip you off in the process through pricing, I'm really shocked that they have the sales volume that they have today. I mean, let's be honest. Yeah, Challenger and Charger sales are kicking all kinds of ass, but how long is that going to last? And when these guys start having issues with the cars and Dodge starts telling them to jog on, I don't think they're going to be buying another product from Dodge probably for the rest of their lives. So luckily though, I've been taken really good care of by Dodge. When I had problems with my first work truck, Dodge took care of it, no questions asked, and made good on any warranty that I had on that thing. So I guess in that respect, I can't complain. A lot of guys have had problems with their cars and Dodge has declined their warranty claim. Some of them famously. So anyway, they didn't want to have anything to do with repairing or replacing my transmission, that's for sure. Rip is saying he's back. Cal's is asking, do you like the Rip superchargers on the V6? Thanks for the great answer, by the way. Thank you very much, Catalyst. Yeah, they actually work great. Haven't run into too many of them. I think we only had one or two of them come up to the shop when I was there. And yeah, they haul ass. I mean, they're fun little cars. Let's see. Cassidy, of course, 392s are expensive. Hell, a 345 was still $7,000 to get a crate motor until like 6 months ago. Granted, they seem to have a better tube and a better tune and crate for them. Yeah, well, you know what I'm talking about, man. I mean, look how much this stuff is costing. I I mean, $7,000 for a freaking. I mean, dude, you gotta be kidding me with some of these pricing. But you can't. I mean, it's just. I mean, I know all of it's expensive, and I get that. But my God, man, some of the costs nowadays are just ridiculous. JG saying, saw a real sick modded 2018 GT350 with a Fat House Fabs twin turbo setup running in the 8s with manual at over 160 miles an hour in the quarter. Amazingly fast car. I hope Mopar builds a lightweight hypo car in the near future. You know, the stuff that I hear about what Mopar is coming out with, I mean, that has become a moving target as well at this point. I would love to tell you that you're looking at something that, you know, Hemi-powered Viper replacement being the CUDA, but I don't know. There's been some disinformation come out. There's also been a lot of stuff that they've just been spitballing. I don't really know what has been truly greenlit. Only the people that are working on it do, and they're obviously gag ordered and as well they should be. But I would like to see something interesting come from Mopar. I would really like to see something naturally aspirated come from Mopar that I can get excited about, which there is nothing there for me. And by the way, let's be real. I don't care if this is, you know, we're talking aftermarket stroker motors. I couldn't care less about that. I am so bored with that because nobody's really supporting the platform very well. So you're not seeing, you know, the 468s like you see with the LS guys that are making 650 wheel on a Mustang dyno, you know, really making like seriously strong horsepower numbers. You're just not seeing that out of the Mopars. They've got a set of heads that won't quit, but, you know, a great set of heads and a short block that can actually take quite a bit of power, but no intake manifold to support it. And to be quite honest with you guys, a platform that does not suit itself very well to having a ton of RPM and a ton of power thrown at it. Because number one, it's heavy and you just need so much gear to get the thing rolling. Honestly, you know, if I had it my way, it would probably be something like this. It would be a like a 30 over 392 Holley intake. The cam that I would spec would probably be something around 226, 234 with about an intake center line of about 109. And I would tighten up the ICL to about 112. And I would force that thing to spin to about 7,400 RPM, keep the LSA tight to kind of keep the RPM band a little bit tighter. But just try to take as much advantage of that power stroke as I could with a tighter LSA and just run the most aggressive profile that I possibly could. That would be the type of engine build that I would love to put together for one of these things, but you just wouldn't be able to do anything with it. The car's too damn heavy. You need to run a gear, but nobody supports the freaking ZF gear. I think you can get through DSS. I think if you can retrofit a Gaytrag rear end, I think you can get a 331 gear in the Gaytrag, go through DSS for a drive shaft, get ready for that thing to vibrate its tits off. But go that route and maybe have something that'll work. But then again, I mean, it's just race car life. But anyway, that's what I would put together. By the way, that's a free engine combo for you. Rip said, I feel you on how Mopar is treating us. I've always been a Mopar guy and have two SRTs, but I feel like we are falling behind. Yeah, I mean, look, I've owned 3 Vipers in my life, and I probably will never own another one because they just don't make it the way that Corvette makes Corvettes. And I say Corvette making Corvettes because it is a brand in and of its own. Williams checking in and saying, the problem I worry about is oversaturated market. Everybody's buying them. They've kind of lost their uniqueness, especially since law enforcement is buying them. Yeah, not anymore in Texas, by the way. The Chargers are falling apart like they're made out of Legos. In fact, I was hanging out with one of the DPS guys at a tire shop this weekend. He was getting some tires put on a Tahoe, and you know, he was saying, look, I wish I had my Charger back, but as much fun as that he had, and as fun as that car is for him to drive, he said that, they just keep having too many problems. He said camshaft, warped cylinder head, problems with the front ends on the cars. Now, granted, they beat the living hell out of those cars. But, yeah, they are watered down. The other watered down, speaking of water, what about the waterfall effect when we're talking about the fact that you get SRT hoods on cars? Now you got, anyway, hold that thought. I need to get my charger. This rig is just about to shut down. Hold on just a second. Enjoy the view. Hang on. Forgot to plug this thing in. Let's get this thing, breathe a little bit of life back into this contraption here. There we go. Boom. All right, now we're back in the mix. Let's see. Riff saying, so on top of the unlocked PCM, Trinity 2 tuner, and both tunes from Hemi Fever, what do you think I'm going to pick up at the track? It goes on to say that is also going from just 20-inch Mickey Thompsons to the two 17-inch Mickey Thompson R's and some skinny front runners. I mean, if it's set up the way that it should be, the car should run pretty easy 1050s. So, I don't know. I mean, in this weather, full weight, I would say worst case 1065, somewhere along those lines. With that setup, let's see. Cal is asking, do you still have the Scat Pack? No, I don't. It was actually an SRT. I saw some of your older videos with what looked like a 392. It is. It's an SRT 392, and no, I do not have that car anymore, unfortunately. Devin's saying, true, it's the material that Dodge manufacturers need to change. Yep, I can agree with that. So, getting back to, the thing with the 392s, the NA stuff and all of that, let's see, hold on a second. Riff's saying, I think I'm just going to go with the transmission tune from Hemi Fever and stay away from the normal tune. You still have to tune the engine, though. You got some rev limiters that you're going to have to adjust in that engine tune. So you still have to have the credits if you're running HP tuners. You have to tune the engine and you have to tune the trans in concert, no matter what. But at any rate, yeah, getting back to the NA stuff, it irks me a little bit. And when I look at the amount of money that guys have been spending on cars, it floors me that we're stuck in the aftermarket having to throw the kind of cash that we have to throw at these things just to keep them competitive. And that's the other thing. I mean, you drop weight out of these cars and you get them down into the same weight as, say, a Mustang or a Camaro. They dominate at that point. But what does it cost to drop weight? And that's kind of the other side of this coin that I wanted to talk about. Everybody keeps talking about power. Guys, these things are making a shitload of power from the factory. I got to tell you something. A stroke small block making a net horsepower rating of, say, 485, like a 392, is a ton of power. It used to be back in the day, a stroke small block, if, a 408, you'd be doing good to make 400 and, anything horsepower to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno. Be doing, spectacular, make 405 on a dyno jet. These things are making more than that, and they're emissions legal, emissions clean. So, the main thing is weight, man. These things just weigh too much. But again, let me get back to it though. Sidebar, I know I do it a lot. What does it cost? Well, how much does a set of the Speed Logic's lightweight bumper supports cost? And are they safe in an accident? I don't know. But how much does that cost? How much does a lightweight seat cost? How much does a rear seat delete cost if you want to keep the thing looking clean? I mean, a rear seat delete doesn't cost you anything other than time, but what would it cost if you want to go with the rear seat delete as it sits? Wheels and tires is another story. Hey, what about these rotors? Guys, if you got a Hellcat, you got a heavy set of rotors up there. What does that cost? Or an SRT? What do those things cost to replace? What if you want to go with a 15-inch conversion? All that stuff, I mean, it starts to add up and add up and add up, and you're throwing money on top of money with a side of money at these things. It's just amazing to me how much you've got to spend to take away from these cars and have them still be streetable and have them still be called a car, I guess, as opposed to just a dragster. Something you take to the drag strip to go run a number and brag about a number that you ran, and that is, I guess, technically by rights got a VIN tag and it's got insurance and it passes emissions. I think you guys know where I'm going with that part of it. But anyway, how much does that cost? What is that? How deep are you going to be into it? Oh, that's the other thing. Guys have asked me if I'm running the lightweight bumper supports. No, I'm not, but I have been thinking about installing them. Just haven't gotten around to that yet. And I don't know if I'm willing to, I don't know if I'm willing to spend the money to actually run the lightweight bumper supports on this car just yet. So let's see. Riff's also asking, does the Diablo Sport Trinity 2 tuner let me change the shift points, or is that in the tune? In the Trinity, you might be able to change shift points. They may have some update to them, but that's more in the tune than anything else. Floyd's checking in saying, saw your last few videos. Congrats on the 1028, 1030 pass you recently had. Cars hauling the mail for sure. I will hopefully make it back over to HRP here soon. Very nice. Yeah, you need to get out there, Floyd. Where you been, bro? And yeah, you missed your opportunity for the track rental. Got that thing filled up, man. So if we have any dropouts, I'll let you know. But yeah, hurry up and get down there. Rip saying, I had to talk to a certain company into selling me the Trinity 2 platform so I can get custom tunes, unlike the other Trinity tuner, because I'm in California. I can understand that completely. Cat was saying, I heard the drag pack weighs something like 1,000 pounds less. If you're talking about the actual drag pack cars, yeah, they probably do weigh somewhere around 1,000 pounds less. Those cars have no interior whatsoever. They have no dash, at least from what I remember anyway. They're all just standalone setups. Yeah, those things are much lighter. No safety equipment, no airbags, no carpets, no creature comforts, no nothing. And all that does actually weigh up. JG's asking, pricing is so expensive between newer cars and modding. I think I'm about getting a cherry looking lightweight 68 Dart with an NA Stroker 383 and have fun building it up and racing it and still have the money. Like, there's a lot of guys that have started to do that. The only issue, bro, you're going to run into is finding that 68, man. I'm telling you right now, if you find a clean one, and I mean a God's honest, like, clean car, you'll be doing real good and you'll be lucky in the process. I have been looking for E-bodies. I've been looking for A-bodies, B-bodies. I've given up on them because there's nothing out there anymore that I can find that is within a reasonable price point. Now, granted, a lot of these guys have done a lot of work to these cars to get them just to an acceptable level. You got to remember, man, those cars from back then, dude, those things were playthings back then. People would trade cars in a lot more frequently. Manufacturers had updates a lot more frequently, and cars, the cost was cheaper, not in that it was just a dollar figure less than it is today, but if you made an equivalent of, say, $50,000 a year today, which was actually kind of an easy conversion for 1968, it's literally 5,000 equals 50,000 today. So if you made $5,000 a year back then, a typical car would cost $2,500, roughly $25,000 in today's numbers. That Dart may come in at the equivalent of $20,000. Well, it's just finding the right car is so unimaginably difficult because of the expense that you have to go through. And the modern stuff is, the average cost now is like $34,000. It's basically 1.5 times more expensive now than what it used to be back then, just based on the buying power of the dollar and the amount of technology that's in the cars today. Plus, you've got bills now that you just didn't have back then. Cell phone, cable, whatever. You just have bills now that you just didn't have back then that kind of chew into that car fund. Let's see. Ruth saying, I feel like if they just started making all their motors full aluminum, it would really help with weight. It would also help with marginal utility. If they would just start making all the engines aluminum, then it would be cheaper to make them all aluminum. Ruth saying, I had to put almost 20 grand into his SRT8 to make over 600 horsepower, man. That is crazy dollars, bro. Nevin saying, doesn't Ford have better quality than Dodge or Chrysler? Man, in some areas, man, but you start, what is better? I mean, isn't that the biggest question is, how much better do you have to get before you can call something better? As opposed to just being kind of the same. There's some areas where Ford, I think, has better quality, like interior components, but engines, transmissions, things like that. I can tell you that as far as fleet goes, the company that I work for, we use Dodge trucks now. We used to use Ford trucks, and all of the Ford trucks that we used to have typically got about 250,000 miles out of them before they were flipped. Right now we're using Dodges, and all the 2018 Dodges that we have, a lot of them have 170, 180,000 miles on them. They're trucking along just fine. So it's kind of hard to tell from that aspect, but all of them have problems. All of them have some Achilles heel. Ford is some electrical issues. No real mechanical issues to speak of, though. So we'll see. That's the only thing I can say. But quality, probably the common conception would be to go with the Ford for quality. Jebediah checking in, saying, what up, Mason? What up? Got the fist bump. I like it. Except saying, need a new body design. Look at how huge the doors are on the Challenger. Yeah, they are monstrous. Riv saying, Jebediah, the aluminum motor. Riv 33 SRT, the tuner. Let's see. Riv saying, I will say when it comes to the new Coyote motor and to a lesser extent the new GM motors, you can make a lot more power with just a supercharger compared to the Mopars. Yeah, well, that's the thing, though. I mean, you can not only make a lot more power, but if something does tend to go haywire, it's less expensive to fix. Now, that's not to say that it's still not expensive. It just means that it is less expensive. If you blow up a 6.2 liter LS3, it's still going to be costly to replace it. If you blow up a 392, it is going to be a tear-jerking experience to get replaced. So again, you got to pay the Mopar tax, and it's typically 50%. Let's see. William saying reasonable price classic cars. Gonna spend a fortune on any of them. It looks like he's saying. Yeah, you are, and you're going to spend a lot of money, and you're just not going to get a lot of driving experience too. And I hate to tell you guys that, but I've driven quite a few. There's very few that I really like. Oddly enough, it's the Mopars that I typically like of the older cars to just drive. But there's still a lot to be desired, no doubt about it. Never saying if cars were built fully carbon fiber like some cars, it would be built really strong and be lighter and faster, even though carbon fiber is expensive. Yeah, but you're not going to see carbon fiber being the thing that they make the cars out of, because you can't turn it that quickly. The reason why carbon fiber is expensive is because it's a process. There ain't a process when you're stamping sheet metal. It just ka-chunk and it makes the piece of sheet metal. Can't do that with carbon fiber. The time that it takes, resin still has to cure, all of that is pretty significant. Riv's saying, I also feel like overhead cam is in the future when it comes to making power. Very true on that one. I would like to see it myself. Let's see. Nevin's saying a carbon fiber is more strong than metal, steel, aluminum. It's also very light like plastic. Well, it is kind of a plastic. So yes, you are right, as a resin. Riv saying pushrod seems to have its limits, even though NASCAR does pretty good. Yeah, you can't really compare the two. You know, you're talking about a solid lift setup that is got just obnoxious duration numbers on the camshaft. Even though they've got restrictors and everything else, there's ways around that. So Fox asking, would FCA ever consider making bodies out of fiberglass like the Corvettes do to make them lighter? Who knows with that? I mean, you start looking at some of the CAFE requirements, there's no telling what some of the manufacturers will start to do. But plastic would be a great way to go. I wouldn't mess with fiberglass. I'd just go straight plastic and just, you know, reskin an existing reskin an existing platform. It's basically how the Vipers were anyway. Rib's saying, I don't know if I like the whole making power at a really high RPM thing like overhead cam has, but it does have its advantages. I can tell you that it does have its advantages, but where you'll find a lot of detractors is large displacement engines with a fairly wide LSA cam, lobe separation angle cam, are always more fun to drive in and day out scenarios. I'm not necessarily talking about your wide open throttle in it to win it, but I can tell you that a lot of times something that just doesn't make any real horsepower, but just makes a lot of torque and just spins to a certain point and shifts can be a lot of fun to drive. And you get that torque hit, that instant tip in torque hit, which is actually pretty satisfying to drive. And let's see, Nevin's saying, I do know for a fact that the 392 is more reliable than Hellcats. I think you've got that backwards. Hellcats are far and away less prone to failure than 392s. And I know that from working at a shop. Riv's saying, I think the 392 is more reliable if you leave it alone compared to the Hellcat. Again, seen way too many failures with 392s compared to zero failures with Hellcat stock. And that is just a reality that I've seen. A lot of it has to do with the fact that the 392s were running the displacement on demand type of lifter. Those things are a pain in the ass, and that's kind of part of the reason why they failed. Magnetti Morelli had a revision right around the middle part of 2015. So I think the 2016 and up cars have the better lifters in them. So less failures, but still had failures nonetheless. And, but yeah, stock Hellcat, very durable car, very few failures, very robust. 392, when left alone, fantastic engine, a little bit more prone to having issues with camshafts and lifters, but it's in the transmission that I had seen the most concern. Let's see. Riff saying, right now, in my opinion, is the Hellcat's way to go if you really want to make a lot of power with a Mopar, but at the same time, yes, it's more expensive. For sure. And Riff saying, what I meant by that is if you want to modify. Well, again, I mean, so look at the cost of what it takes to modify a 392 versus just driving a Hellcat. And again, you're not going to take a 392 anywhere near where you're going to keep a stock Hellcat. It just doesn't work that way. And if the Hellcat owner just gets a little bit bored and decides to throw a 309 rear gear in the car, it's pretty much all over but the crying. But even with a 262, quite honestly, probably the better gear for the street. I don't know. That being said, I used to go sniping after Hellcats with my car, but then again, it was a little bit different story then. If you've got a 392, leave it stock and enjoy it. Bolt-on stuff is great. It helps you stay involved with the car, but aside from that, leave it stock, enjoy it. And if you really get the itch to go much faster and you want to go much faster, get yourself a Hellcat, and you're starting off way ahead of the game and you've got a lot more upside. If you want to spend money, they're a great place a nice hole to throw your money into. But everything has its limits, and as long as you stay within the limits, follow the recipe to the letter, you will be a-okay. Let's see. Nevin's saying a 392 overall is reliable, even if you still mod, but the Hellcats have tons of mechanical issues. Brother, I don't know where you're getting your info, because every Hellcat that I've ever dealt with has been practically bomb-proof. You've seen some issues with superchargers, but I mean, I've seen 392s bone stock fail on the dyno. I watched a bone stock 392 in a Jeep, a SRT Jeep, literally fail idling in the parking lot. It went from making no noise to clank, 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 clank when it ate the lifter, idling in the parking lot. So yeah, there's some things that I've seen that would convince me otherwise. Let's see. Daniel's asking, do you think a used 2010 to 14 Challengers are worth considering now that Dodge is offering some generous rebates on the 2019s? I would stay away from the 2010 to 14 Challengers unless you're getting an SRT, only because there were some potential issues with valve seats at one point. If it's my money, I would just stick with the newest version of what we've got right now. I think you'd be a lot happier with it. And if you got to save for a year to get it, then ain't no sin in saving, man. Save up, get the most reliable, get the newest version. Newest version is the best version right now. And I can say that with confidence because it is just an evolution of what I've got behind me. Not to say that they're not without their quirks, but the quirks are very few and far between on the newer cars. So I would say go with something newer. JG is asking, knowing what you know now, what is your ultimate hypo car and build, past or present, you would like to have out of them all right now? If I had, let me think about this for a minute. If I could have any car under the sun in terms of just modability or anything like that, damn, dude, that's so hard. I would say 2013, 2014 GT500 would be probably number one on the list. Number two would be, let me think, make sure I'm understanding the question properly. Number two would probably be the car that I own, the Hellcat. I just really like these cars, man. I really enjoy them a lot. And then anything from the past, crap. I mean, you'd almost have to give me a mulligan on this one, but something like a Gen 1 Lightning, just Windsor based, being able to do a Coyote swap with something like that with a blower, I think would be a riot, with a 10-speed automatic. There's not a lot that's out there from the past that I'm super interested in that would be like a hypo type of a car or a specialty type of car. it just, there's nothing really that I would want to blend anymore. And I guess that's me in a way kind of being a bit sour grapish about things because, you know, I went looking for older cars and found that I just can't play in that field right now. It's just too damn expensive. And I've got other uses and motivations for my time right now than, throwing a boatload of money at a platform that is questionable at best, both from a safety standpoint as well as a performance handling standpoint. Nevin saying one of my friends owes one and he barely had any issues with it. With 392 is going to be a pretty stout car, man. I didn't have any real issues with mine until right before I went to get rid of it. So, yeah. So Phonic saying, I saw a video of a tuned 2020 Supra outrunning a Hellcat on a 40 to 140 roll. I assume the Hellcat was just spinning the whole time. Not the whole time, but he was definitely probably spinning on the initial hit, especially if he's on street tires. He had every nanny jumping right in the middle of his shit, I'm sure at that point. But the Supras are great, man. I don't see why people are discounting the Supra. I've been saying this for a while about the Supra, guys. It, first of all, is a BMW 3-liter inline six, which means that if it's rated at 300 horsepower, it's really 370 horsepower. Little known fact about BMW is that they lie their tits off about how much power their cars make. That being said, I mean, it should come as no surprise that guys are going to start extracting a lot of power out of that thing. Vishnu is a tuning outfit that has been getting power out of these 3-liter inline sixes for some time now, or at least derivatives thereof. And it was not uncommon for them to get 425, 430 horsepower out of these types of engines to the rear wheels going back years ago. So something along those lines is going to be coming for sure for this thing as well as the Z4. And don't be surprised to start seeing 6, 7, 8, 900 horsepower, and you're going to see that number just keep going up. Yeah, don't be surprised to start seeing that because, in all honesty, you're going to have plenty of these Supras running around making big power. My only question is will the freaking transmission hold it? It's got a derivative of the HP70, I think, in it. I think it's like an HP60. Maybe it is an HP70. Anyway, it's a ZF transmission, and we'll see if it can manage the power. Rift say I'm seeing a lot of good deals on Red Eyes for trading my Hellcat in. Red Eye's a fantastic car, man. I love Red Eyes. Chris is asking, do you prefer 1 7/8 or 1 3/4 for the 5.7? I prefer 1 3/4 for the 5.7. But you're not really going to get hurt too much by 1 7/8. Go 1 3/4, you'll be happy with it. The main reason why I say that is the primaries are ridiculously long on these LX platforms. That's why you just need a slightly larger diameter. Never saying, some people say 392 is more reliable. Some say Hellcats are more reliable. What I've been seeing has mechanical issues, and some of them catch on fire. Well, some Hellcats been catching on fire. That's actually an older issue, and I think that had more to do with. So to give you an idea, the Hellcats, there is a fuel pressure sensor that originally was bad, and a lot of them had them replaced. And they had something to do with the replacement of the fuel pressure sensor, I think, that was causing some fires, but that's since been taken care of. The Hellcat, the clips on the Hellcat are actually seemingly a little bit more robust than the ones on the 392. River saying, I think you just hear more about the Hellcat giving out. Oh, he's talking about Nevin. I don't think it has anything to do with them being less reliable. It's just that there's more buzz about them. Well, that, and it's more spectacular when a Hellcat breaks. I mean, that's, but most of them don't. Most of them hold together just fine. And let's see. Oh, Rift is saying he's owned them all and he's hot rodding them all. Let's see. Jebediah saying everything but the Toyota emblem is BMW manufactured material on the Supra. Very accurate. Fun car, by the way. If it just wasn't 50 grand, man, damn it. I wouldn't trade the Hellcat in on one, but dude, thought has crossed my mind. I'd love to get my hands on one of those. The fuck is that? HU37 saying FCA doesn't want you to mess with the car. You have to pay to unlock the PCM. The exhaust manifold is part of the cylinder head on the V6, and the transmission is at its limit in the 392. Very, very accurate there. William saying a basic Hellcat's probably the best buy for your buck. The red eye made that possible. Yeah, no kidding, right? A lot of guys with Hellcats actually ended up going over to the red eye, which is not a bad thing. Again, red eye is a lot of fun to drive. They've got a bit more punch down low. It really is kind of the equivalent. It's going to sound so strange, but it's almost like the equivalent of going from a small block to a big block with the red eye. Only in that, and the Demon too, by the way. You just get this. It's got a little bit more punch down low, and it's just enough to where you notice it. It's not like blow your freaking hair back type of situation. It's just enough to where you notice it, and but I don't know. I don't know if it's 20 grand worth noticing, but you do notice it slightly. Let's see. HU37 saying there is more aftermarket support for my Mustang V6 than there is for the Mopar. Yeah, there is, man. I hate to say it, but that's part of the reason why a lot of guys are really starting to move away from Mopar. And I've been saying this for a while now, but mark my words, it's still true. If you want a fantastic deal on a used 392 powered Mopar contraption, Challenger and Charger mainly in this conversation, if you want a great deal on one of those cars, look no further than the used car department of your local Ford dealership. There have been more 392 powered cars traded in on Mustang GTs than I know of. At one point at Tommy Vaughn Ford, which for any of you old school Ford hot rodders know Tommy Vaughn very well. I used to be a staple over there. I think I was paying somebody's rent for a while. But anyway, they had several of them in the used car parking lot. And when I had pulled in to take a look at the Mustangs for the first time I actually kind of started getting the itch to look at them, like seriously look at them. The 2018s had been out for about 6 months, and already they had a flood of 392 cars. And from there, I just started to notice it across the board. Anytime I passed a Ford dealership, they had several 392 powered cars in their used car parking lot, or in their used car lot. Let's see. Rick is saying after seeing what the new GT500 can do, he'd love to have one. Man, I'd love to get my hands on one too. I think they'd be a lot of fun. Let's see. Rick saying, I know it's a bit off topic, but I never felt that way about a Ford. They were running in the 10s with the stock tires. Yeah, they are. They are running in the 10s with the stock tires. It's a little bit lighter. They've got a better tire on the car. They've got a bit more sophisticated launch control on those cars. So, yeah, I'd say that, yeah, they are definitely in the 10s on stock tires. You can't say that about a Hellcat. But then again, if you put a shit tire on the back of the Hellcat, which they do, what do you expect to get out of it? Put an all season basically on the back of these things. It's not going to get out of the hole to save its life. Chris is saying, would you stay away from the JBA ceramic coated 1 3/4 long tubes? The Cooks are crazy expensive. I like the Cooks, and just keep in mind, man, you get what you pay for when it comes to exhaust components. Just saying, man. Look around, you can find deals on Cooks too. Don't get too worked up over that. Look around, you can get deals on Cooks. Let's see. Christian saying, I got to sit in a new Supra, and boy, howdy, did that thing feel nice. I have not had a chance to, and I am jealous, but I bet it did. So Fox saying, speaking of the red eye making the Hellcats affordable, I'm really hoping the new C8 will score me a great deal on a C7. That is actually going to be happening. I bet you. 6'6" Hellcat, is your cat modded? It's sort of 309 gear, one of my transmission tunes, drag pack, and Mopar rear seat delete, and a lightweight idler pulleys. That is all that is done to that car. And Rip saying, when I get my unlocked PCM and my tuner, what should I raise my shift point to in my 2015 Hellcat? 6,200 RPM. Nevin saying, Chrysler reliably in general is one of the lowest compared to other car companies. Even Scotty Kilmer said himself. It is significantly lower. In some areas it's lower. In other areas, it's just fine. I'll say this, man. With proper maintenance, the Mopars, I think, are on par with everybody. You have use, misuse, and abuse on the engineering side of the product usage cycle. Mopars do well with use. I would say they do fair with misuse, and they do poor with abuse. Fords do great with use. They do very well with misuse, and they do acceptable with abuse. And for the most part, Chevy does good, and good on all three counts: use, misuse, and abuse. So, it just depends on if you run them hard, you got to maintain them hard. That's just kind of the way that works out. Rift is saying, I'm thinking about raising my shift points in my automatic Hellcat to 6,500. Do you think that's too high? I do think it's too high. I don't like shift points that are that high. You'll have some that'll argue with me. I typically tend to be a little bit more mother henish when it comes to shift points, and I haven't seen any benefit running my car that high at the drag strip. So, this is one of those cases where my mother henning has been validated by real world track experience. I have never run shift points that high other than in testing with my own personal car. Each car is slightly different, though your results may vary. Rip is saying, I always thought that the SRTs had better quality than other Dodge products. Yes. In some areas, no. In others, they're all made in the same plant, so it doesn't really matter. He's saying at least that's the way he felt in his. Probably for the 6.1s, yeah, I would say for sure. That is the case. And Rip's saying, I'd rather be safe than sorry when raising your shift point. Yeah, I just haven't seen a reason. And then Nevin's saying, yeah, it depends on how the owner maintains the car. It has everything to do with it. I've seen Fords fail at 65,000 miles. Coyotes, in this case, fail at 65,000 miles. I've seen LSs fail even earlier than that, say around 50-ish thousand miles. I've seen 392s last over 150,000 miles, about 157,000 in this case, last check. But then again, I mean, you got to take everything is a case-by-case basis. These are machines, guys. These are not living organisms. They've got to be maintained. If you run them hard, maintain them hard. Don't ever forget that formula. It works 100% of the time. Hell, like I say, we've got on the company I work for, fleet vehicles that, these guys will change the oil in these trucks, full synthetic, every 4,000 miles, 5,000 miles. They got 170, 180,000 miles on these trucks, and they get ran the piss out of. So, and I maintain the piss out of mine too. And, I've said it over and over again, when it comes time to have to get a new truck, this is my truck. They're going to have to just give me this truck as part of a bonus or something, because I love my truck. Nevin, did Unicorn block me? No. Oh, no, it says message retracted. It just means he went to say something and then decided not to say something. Rip is saying, so next week I will have my new PCM and tune and transmission tune. I will let you know before and after on the dyno. I like it, man. Let me know. Symphonic's asking, any thoughts on that Motor Trend article that dynoed the C8 at 560 wheel horsepower on a Mustang dyno? Of course, clearly that can't be right. I think that's a little bit odd and a little bit off. That's probably more like it was reading 560 and it was probably flywheel horsepower is what they were looking at. All I can tell you about the new Vet is the new Vet is no joke. It is legit. I think it's going to be the most fun car to drive out of the crop of all the new cars that are coming out. I think it's going to make the most sense. I think that there's a lot of upshot to the new Vet because just like what we were discussing earlier, you've got levels that you can look up to from the Vet. You'll have the new Corvette, then you'll have the new Vet Grand Sport, then you'll have the new Vet Z06, then you'll have the new Vet ZR1. You're always going to have levels to look up from. And if you've got the top of the mountain Corvette, you know that you've got the absolute best that you can get from GM at that point. And again, it's just Mopar doesn't have anything like that for the 392 guys. That is as high as their mountain goes. And to be honest with you, I think that if they do go anything more aggressive than a 392, I think initially they were worried that it would start to it would pull too many sales away from the Hellcat. That's why there's such a performance difference between the 392 and the Hellcat. 392, actually, if you're just farting around in the car, and again, this is stock for stock, but if you're just playing around with a car, city driving or you're out on back roads or something like that, and you're not really getting into the throttle, you're mainly just hovering around that half throttle mark. That's really where the 392 can outshine a Hellcat. You get into anything more than that, 3/4 throttle and more though, and the Hellcat it ain't even close. It walks around it. But Hellcat's got its good points. 392's got some good points of its own though. Let's see. Scotty Kilmer says Dodge, this is chaos in the unicorns. Scotty Kilmer says the Dodge is unreliable. The dude who says everything but the Toyota is crap and is trash Mopar. Shocker. Yeah, no shit. Fucking people. Rich saying, I'm actually really curious myself. Aren't really thinking about shaving the shift points to at least 6,300 will raise the horsepower the most. Yeah, I mean, you're not, the problem is, okay, so from your point of view, horsepower is on its way up. As horsepower is on its way up, torque is going down. That's how it works mathematically. After 5,200 RPM. If torque is still going up after 5,200 RPM, horsepower is on a freaking rocket ride straight up. That's not how these cars work though. Torque is dropping, horsepower is starting to level off. The problem is that torque is always falling off, and it starts to fall off faster after about 6,200 RPM. There are a couple of gears where you might want to drag the shift point up over 6,300 RPM, but for the most part, start out around 6,200 and then you might want to creep it up a little bit from there. Do it at the drag strip, but give yourself one pass to get the yips out after you make a tune, because typically these cars get pissed right after they get a tune. Let's see. HU37 saying, quality issues apply to certain cars and not others. That can be correct. But guys, I just realized we are up over 2 hours. I am going to have to check out. Let's see if I can catch up with everybody else. Rick, appreciate your contributions, man. I appreciate hanging out with you. Nevin, same to you. Let's see. Alt Mark saying, going to order my NSR cam from MMX. Is it okay to go ahead and get springs anyway? I always suggest getting springs regardless. So yes, it is okay to get springs with that. Just make sure you're running a full set of Hellcat lifters. Do not try to use the DoD style lifters with that cam. I would also suggest running a set of 080 push rods, just to be on the safe side. But guys, thank y'all very much. I'm going to check out. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we will catch y'all later. Adios.